Draft physics video. Yay! Science. But anyway, it's all one thing. Science, physics. Physics is everything, pretty much. Point of view, get it right. This is just so foundational, in the sense that if you start making the building out of whatever, graham crackers, it doesn't matter if you use like real bricks later, because the graham crackers are just going to get you in the end. They're going to go soggy and you're done for. And that's what's happened to physics. So anyway, there's this video. Quantum mechanics exists. 2 hours of Pirot and Hofladay. They only spend an hour on physics. And it's every leprechaun, Tinkerbell bit of physics you want to talk about. That's what they talked about. So I watched it, so I should mention the terms anyway. I'll do my little bit of opining, and that'll be it. Just disappointing that it's just so not even close to talking about anything real. So even the idea quantum mechanics exists. Quantum mechanics, what I originally called quantum electrodynamics, is just basically an understanding of this mechanism of when photons interact with, they terminate. They are, and then they can be regenerated in the sense that energy goes in to an electron, energy can come out, and that's what a photon does. It interacts with electrons, and so the subject is essentially just the subject of what happens when photons interact with electrons. And there's certain probabilities to outcomes regarding what will happen based on the conditions. And the conditions are going to be established by the state of the electrons, not the state of the photon. Okay, that's a statement I'm making. That's what I'm asserting. Certainly people believe the photon has qualities, it has properties, beyond just polarization and frequency. I argue that if you're going to understand that there's a camera won't stay where I put you, please. If you're going to say that you're going to establish that a photon has properties, Jesus Christ, I don't know why this isn't staying. Usually does. Anyway, the things happen. It just seems obvious that you look where the thing that's doing the complex thing, the electron, for any complexity coming out in the behavior. Yeah, we can't put either one of these things under a microscope and look at them. We can't understand their exact mechanics, but I'm just saying that just imagining it in your brain, it just seems more reasonable to go where the thing that's tied to a whole bunch of other stuff, the electron tied to protons, neutrons, atoms, has all kinds of electrical and magnetic connections, nuclear forces affecting its behavior, that it would be the source of any kind of probability, any kind of mood. What mood is it in? What's it going to do this time? And what's it going to do is going to be dependent on the condition of those electrons, in my opinion. It just seems obvious. So anyway, that's what I'd say first. Just this idea that quantum mechanics exists is such a presumptive statement, in the sense that what kind of quantum mechanics are you talking about? The existence of probabilistic outcomes in interactions between photons and electrons? Yes, that exists. This mumbo jumbo that photons have frequency, they have electrical and magnetic properties, that they are in magical states where they aren't any real place, that kind of stuff. That doesn't exist. And it certainly hasn't been proven to exist. So anyway, so there's little things they said. No isolated phenomenon was kind of a statement Pirot made. Maybe there are. Maybe there are photons that never hit a thing ever. They just shot out of the Big Bang and went forever. and they'll never interact with anything ever. They're sort of isolated, maybe. But anyways, it's not. I'm just saying it's not a statement that means much, in my opinion. So then they describe materialism in sort of weird ways, but they're talking about this information theory. That everything's information. Which, what does that mean? Oh, you mean everything, all the little bits have a history? They came from someplace? Yeah, that's true. Um, but I think clearly all they have is a direction, and we certainly see that with photons, and certainly the traditional understanding of photons, as even Feynman said, they go from point A to point B in a straight line. That's what they do. Um, Generally speaking, until they interact with something. I mean, photons go all billions of light years across space and get here coherently. As a coherent representation of where they came, a straight line history. Anyway, so I would argue that, yeah, it's all just direction that's being exchanged. It's not information, it's just direction. And certainly you could call it information if you want to be silly and say there's information value in some where you came from. It's not much information value. I think it kind of insults the word information to take that simplicity and apply that word to it. But anyway, what I would argue is, yeah, it's just patterns. So the directionality creates patterns because the direction causes interactions with each other. As things interact with each other, they end up in maintained pattern. They end up in one of these spirals, one of these gravitational, I'm connected to you by force connections, and those patterns just repeat. So, like a fractal, it's a repeating bit of simplicity, but as you repeat the simplicity over and over and over, you end up with this huge, giant, more complex appearing pattern. But it's the same pattern. It's just repeating itself in minorly changed or altered variations. So it's just patterns repeating and combining. Patterns repeating and combining. Anyway, so then they got into the math and the multiverse, and like there's some sort of confusion about what math is, and I don't think there's any confusion. That math is just a state. It's a property that things have, a characteristic of them, that they can be in these patterns that we can recognize. Oneness, two-ness, three-ness, four-ness, five-ness. Just another pattern. And so yeah, it's a real function of the universe in the sense that those relationships are relevant because the basic forces make them relevant. The basic force being gravity, the basic force being the quanta of influence, and the fact that there's a constant to it, that the basic element is the same, and the basic element makes it significant proportionally, that 10 is going to be 10 times 1. It's going to have 10 times the amount of potential, 10 times the amount of gravity, that kind of thing. Okay, random versus freedom. So random is just kind of a silly word. Probability is kind of a silly word in the sense that these are words that just have more to do with our ignorance than our intelligence. So these are kind of words that the ignorant have to rely on because we don't know the variables that caused an outcome, and so that we just call it random because we can't know why or what exactly it's doing. And so we call results random when they're just, the probabilities, the patterns are predictable over time, but the individual instances are individual instances, and they happen the way they happen for reasons. They don't just magically, it's not just magically delicious. It's delicious because the right things went into the recipe and it made it delicious. It's not magically delicious. And there's no magical random. There's no None of that really, like I said, doesn't exist. There's no probability. There's inevitability, and that's all there is. And there's just a certain inevitability about the fact that certain patterns will repeat. And again, we're back to patterns, and we're back to the fact that if you have a nail or you have a bump in your tire, that the bump will hit the ground a certain number of times depending on how the tire spins, and all you're doing is adding something like a variable friction. So now we don't know how fast the tire will spin, and therefore we can't know how often, when the exact moment where you'll hit the bump in the tire, because friction is variable. We're spinning wheels on grease or something. So we don't have a consistent pattern anymore. The pattern's been made inconsistent by some variable. But it doesn't make anything magical. Every instance will be an instance, and every instance is predictable if you have enough information. Anyway, enough on that. Alright, then they said the word superposition, which is just, like multiverse, it's just made up. Okay, multiverse is completely just made up. It's just a leprechaun. So you have to think of it that way. It's astrology. And so here you have these real scientists, real physicists, talking about something that was just a made up figment. It's gremlins. It's completely fantasy. That's all it is. There's no evidence of any of this crap. Superposition, the same thing. Superposition is this idea that something is in every state. It's everywhere. It's on Pluto, it's on the Earth, it's over there, it's anywhere it wants to be. And because this can mathematically work to your advantage, somehow, because of your ignorance of variables, that somehow you'll say this is a real thing, and it's not a real thing. There's no such thing. There's no superposition. Nothing is nowhere. Nothing is everywhere. It has a location. It has a specific characteristics. It has specific information. It has specific direction. It has a specific history from where it came from. It has a specific direction it's heading, and it's a condition it's in, its volatility, its sustainability, the age of its pattern, the nuances of its pattern. Its pattern is a real thing in the real world. There's no such thing as fantasy. Everything is everything bullshit. Anyway, just made up words, made up concepts. Again, it's no better than a leprechaun. I mean, leprechauns solve some problems for the world, right? Gremlins really solves a lot of problems, right? I mean, I'm still missing a pot lid for 15 years. Now, I know that pot lid's somewhere. Right? I know it. I think the gremlins have it, right? Where else could it be? So yeah, they solve a problem. The underwear gnome stealing your socks and your underwear. Yeah, well, that makes fucking goddamn sense because something's stealing this shit. The matching sock is somewhere. Somebody obviously took it. So yeah, I mean, it's that silly, right? That's what physics has come down to. Smart people, supposed to be doing smart science, have basically said, I have a missing sock. A gremlin must have taken it. That's all this crap is. So superposition, multiverse, and entanglement are all underwear gnomes. It's all made up bullshit because it provides a convenient place to just sweep the crap you don't understand under the fucking rug of stupidity, of stupid fantasy. Stupid, made up gremlins. Let's make some gremlins in the physics so now we don't have to explain it really. We'll just blame it on the gremlins, blame it on the multiverse, blame it on the fucking entanglement, blame it on the superposition. Don't explain it, just blame it. Alright, so just this bad. Alright, and the other thing is this black hole thing, okay? So they talked a little bit about that, and Pirro talks about it like, oh yeah, well, the escape velocity of light, which is just a silly notion when you think about it. Because even by Einstein's math, if you achieve the escape velocity, if light can't escape, then the forces pushing the acceleration it has in the opposite direction, technically, has neutralized all function. It no longer exists as metabolizing a thing. It's gotten so slow. There's no time where it exists, so it's not doing anything. So Puro was implying that from the perspective of the photon falling back into the black hole, or the thing falling into the black hole, going across the event horizon, that it would seem to be living forever. It wouldn't be living in the first place. None of this shit could ever survive. No matter could survive accelerating through the event horizon. And not even the constituents could function in this environment. They would be frozen, essentially. And being frozen isn't the same thing as doing. So there wouldn't be any passage of time. They wouldn't have a life. Nothing would happen. They even used the word reversal of time. Piro talked about time as if it was a particle, a thing. And you're like, what are you talking about? Time is just a consequence of distance. It takes time to do distance, and because it takes time to do distance, that's why time exists. And it sort of makes sense intuitively, right? I mean, you can't just instantaneously be here and then be here. So there seems like the universe should have some sort of rule that says you can't be here and in the same instant be here. It's going to take time to get from here to here. Makes sense. And that's time. Time is just a byproduct of the fact that distance can't be, you can't steal it. You can't just take a distance without paying. And you're paying by creating time, by having to endure the time process. Process takes time. Anything that's a process takes time. Therefore, time exists. But it's not a thing that has any meaning. The only thing that really has meaning is that it takes time to do distance things. So the force, the gravity, the thing that's running the whole universe is the thing. The speed of light constant creates the foundation of understanding time, because the distance established by how far a piece of light moves, in one unit of time, that distance establishes how everything else. So everything that takes some amount of time, somewhere in it, all this distance had to take place. It's the distance things moved that required the time. So if something takes time, it takes time for a reason. Yeah. So I think that's all. But yeah, I think it'd be better to have a conversation where we say, let's just get rid of all the leprechauns and all the gremlins and all the fairy princesses and all the fairy tales, and let's try to understand reality without inventing any of those things. And I think if you do that, you just take all that clutter, just say fuck the clutter, fuck the bullshit, fuck the graham cracker foundation. Let's try to build a real foundation out of something solid, and do that step by step. I think it occurs to you pretty quickly that this idea of forces not being magical, like invisible special, magnetism, it's just special magnetism force. If you break it down and say, okay, everything has to happen because some pebble of something makes it happen. Something has to actually hit something else. It has to go from here to there and hit it for there to be an effect. You can't transfer any information or transfer any character without something leaving here and going there. And once you get that idea that there's no gremlins doing it, that an actual rock has to do it, an actual thing has to leave me, fly over there to make me influence it. There's no, my brain will do it. No bullshit. No ESPN fucking forces flying through space in the magic fucking wormholes of whatever. Leprechaunery. Yeah, it'll occur to you that, okay, I get what Gary's talking about now, because gee, if you just turn this all into just one force and just quit playing this game that there's a bunch of forces, and you just understand that yes, it's gravity all the way down, and that the source of the gravity is a thing, an actual event taking place, and everything is just a manifestation of that. Everything's just kind of made of gravity. Photons are gravity with a frequency. Electrons are gravity caught in spirals. Protons are bunches of those all spiraling around each other. They're galaxies. The electron could be seen as a solar system. The Or maybe even more appropriately, the electron could be seen as the Earth and the Moon, and then the proton could be seen as the solar system, and the neutron is a different kind of solar system. Let's just say opposite kind. One gravitationally connected by two things orbiting each other, which creates one kind of very, very like a neutron star, a blinking gravity. It only has gravity when the two things are lined up. No gravity here, no gravity here, gravity here. And then when they have that center object creating the gravity, then the gravity is everywhere. So they're always on. The light is always on, or the light is blinking. You can look at it that way. I'm just saying, once you just break it down to one mechanism, it's one system. And you can sort of see that. Like I said, you look out into the universe and we found out that these galaxy things exist. And, we're stuck with this swirling shit again. The solar system, swirling shit. The Earth and the Moon, swirling shit. The Earth itself, swirling shit. The Sun, swirling shit. Swirls all the way down. Come on. All the way up, all the way down. It's all just swirl, fuckers. Okay, that's probably good enough. The interesting question just popped into my head would be the origin of the swirl. I mean, we have this idea. Okay, where did the gravity come from? Well, it had to come from this big bang, creating pressure. Everything bounces off the pressure, and you create this equal, arrows all pointing, going from all directions, and it's kind of has the appearance of an external force pushing us in, but it's also a consequence of an internal force pushing out. Where it doesn't have freedom, where something blocks its ability to push out at the speed it wishes to. It would like to. It would natively do if there wasn't stuff in its way. But that is an interesting question. Is the whole universe being held together by gravity? I would argue not, that the Big Bang is probably the correct theory, because I believe that the expansion falls apart at the edges. The stuff that we see at the edge of the universe looks like it's going really fast, because it is going really fast, because there's no gravity out there. There's more gravity going in one direction, so it's being accelerated out of the universe. It's falling apart, and the reason why it's creating so much light, the reason why these things are so bright, is because as they're leaving the universe, they're leaving very fast, and they're falling apart very fast. So that's why something like a neutron star produces, 10,000 times more light than we would think it should, or more energy, let me put it that way. More, I don't know whether it's microwaves or whatever they produce, but some electromagnetic emission, and it's a significant amount of electromagnetic emission, which is just gravity again, but whatever. Anyway, yes, that's enough for this episode. And just sorry that this is, you can't have a conversation about something real about physics. It's all tangled up in all this leprechaun shit. You want to talk physics? Well, you got to talk about all these leprechauns and poison apples and fairy godmothers and pumpkins and mice, and you're just like, well, talking fish, just It's worse than talking philosophy with religious kooks, in my opinion, because this is even wackier, to tell you the truth. Superposition is a wackier concept than astrology. Multiverse is wackier than voodoo, my opinion. Much wackier. So anyway, till the next time. It's certainly wackier from the perspective of the minds that are believing it. I mean, you can say, okay, people are dumb. The average person is a dumb motherfucker. But these are scientists. These are people that supposedly went to college and got educated, and they're supposed to have a brain, and they fall for this shit. Damn. The photon reads our mind and tries to trick us. The photons going from, bouncing off my eyes, off the light, bouncing off my eye, going into this camera. They went to Pluto. And then, yeah, some of them are on Pluto right now, and then they're going to fly through that lens. I don't think so. I think that's rubbish. No, anyway, till next time.